Over the past couple of weeks, the Ryder Cup has turned into a point of contention for the European team, with members divided on whether they want to let LIV players in or not. And even though we've still got a few months before things kick off in Italy, a delay's only gonna hurt their chances. So what could Team Europe look like by the end of this year? Well, keep watching to find out. First off, the European team argues over the LIV Golf issue. The Ryder Cup's one of those events that end animosities and bring people together. Like, whether you're from the PGA Tour or taking part in the DP World Tour, you're in if you're good enough. And to be fair, when you're talking about two continents taking each other on, then your association shouldn't matter anyway. That said, it seems like LIV Golf has somehow managed to become a disruptive force for a competition that's meant to be all about which region you're from. Why, do you ask? Well, it's got something to do with the team selection. You see, with the rise of Greg Norman's upstart league, golfers have started to develop real rivalries. We mean, if you stood in front of a mirror and said LIV Golf 3 times, Rory McIlroy would probably show up and try to punch you. Yeah, it's gotten that bad. The 33-year-old's been one of the LIV's harshest critics and isn't ready to let anyone into the Ryder Cup's Team Europe. As a matter of fact, he actually wants to extend the PGA Tour suspension and ban all defectors from major events as well. But of course, we already knew that, because ever since day one, he hasn't stopped throwing shit at them. Besides, this aggression is probably what got him the overseer's role alongside Tiger Woods anyway. Having said that, no one was actually expecting him to go up against his own teammates and block LIV entries into the Ryder Cup. After all, it's all about bringing the cup home for your continent. Up next, LIV Golf players are a flat-out no for Rory McIlroy. As we've mentioned earlier, the Irishman's not keen on playing alongside LIV members like Ian Poulter again. And according to him, they've made the decision to abandon the tour for money, so it's only fair that they live with the repercussions as well. At the same time, though, many would argue that the PGA or Saudi League have absolutely nothing to do with the Ryder Cup because, again, it's a purely international affair. On top of that, it's not like the European team's been doing great over the past few years, especially with their talent scattered across different competitions. We mean, the US team's usually sorted pretty easily since all they've got to do is pick out the best PGA members. Team EU, on the other hand, is a lot more complicated, with golfers from DP World Tour also coming into the fray. As a result, it can be a bit hard for them to get together as a unit. That being said, McIlroy isn't concerned by any of that and is dead set on his stance that even if the world turned upside down right now, he wouldn't want those old faces on his team again. In fact, he made it quite clear during one of his press conferences by saying that even if you asked him 100 times, he'd still say no to LIV members in the Ryder Cup squad. What's more, McIlroy is ready to discuss other ideas with Luke Donald. Now, while it's true that the 33-year-old's got a lot of influence on the European team, he's not actually the one making the final decision. The guy who does that is none other than team captain Luke Donald, who got thrown into the role after Stenson's withdrawal. Funnily enough, McIlroy refused to mention the Saudi League player by name. Instead, he kept skirting around the issue by saying that he'd sign up for the Ryder Cup before Donald was in charge. That said, he's fully satisfied with the current captain and is ready to sit down and discuss potential alternatives for the team. For instance, one thing that they've gotta take a look at is the course, which just hosted the Italian Open. Oh, and guess what? McIlroy and Matt Fitzpatrick were also testing their mettle in the event. As a matter of fact, the Englishman actually came pretty close to winning it all and only lost out in the playoff. McIlroy wasn't far behind either, and he finished in 4th place with an impressive 12 under par. So you could say that they've flexed their muscles and gotten a feel for what things could be like at next year's Ryder Cup. Having said that, their job in Rome had more to do with scouting than playing. We mean, yes, it's true that they were playing, but Donald was also watching from the sidelines to pick out potential youngsters for their team's lineup. After all, they've got to look somewhere to replace those LIV Golf members, not to mention that Donald still hasn't made up his mind yet. Scouting talent for the EU squad and actually bringing them into the fray are two completely different things. So even though Luke Donald's assessing his options, he hasn't fully ruled out the possibility of inviting the Saudi League members either. Of course, that'd probably anger McIlroy and a bunch of other people on the team, but as Fitzpatrick said earlier this month, you've got to make sure that you win, and all that takes is having the best 11 guys on your side. On top of that, they can't afford to repeat that horrendous 19-9 whipping by the US and Wisconsin either. And naturally, placing your hope in the hands of inexperienced youngsters isn't always the best approach when you're already trying to play catch-up. In fact, the US Open champions apparently reached out to a LIV member already, saying that he'd happily have him on the team. The team team captain, on the other hand, says that they're still in limbo and nothing has changed since this appointment. According to him, the team simply can make a decision before the PGA antitrust lawsuit has reached its conclusion. Like, for all intents and purposes, the government could bar those players from competing in the tournament anyway. So there's no point in stressing out over the team roster before we get a clearer picture. With that said, we probably won't have to wait much longer to get that extra bit of clarity either, because as things stand, the lawsuit should be wrapped up pretty soon. Following up, McIlroy's ready to bring youngsters into the team. Alright, so with McIlroy ruling out LIV Golf members, someone else has to step up, right? Well, what if we told you that they've already got players in mind to fill in the blanks? Yep, the Irishman's been busy over the past few weeks and has scouted out a bunch of talented youngsters from across Europe. Besides, even if you count the players that are confirmed to be part of the team, you know, like Fitzpatrick or Donald, they've got at least 6 or 7 nailed down. So they just have to go out there and find 5 more people for the remaining positions. That's where things get a bit tricky though. You see, while it may be true that there's an abundance of talent across the EU circuit, being spoiled for choice can also complicate matters because at the end of the day, you've gotta cut people off as well. Having said that, McIlroy's pretty confident that he can put together a team that can take on the mighty Americans. And according to him, the amount of talent that's rising through the ranks of DP World Tour right now is unlike anything he's seen before. Now, of course, you could say that he's just saying that to make his LIV stance look better, but in all seriousness, there are some actually world-class golfers in the circuit right now. Take the Danish youngster Rasmus Højgaard, for example. Not only did he win the European Masters earlier this year, but is also on track to win the French Open, so they definitely don't have a dearth of talent. Finally, how could Team Europe line up at next year's Ryder Cup? As far as the final roster is concerned, there are a few potential options that could slot into Donald's team by the end of the year. Of course, we've already mentioned the 21-year-old prodigy, Rasmus Højgaard. Interestingly enough, is no slouch either and could actually join him on the team. Other than that, Francesco Molinari will be making a return as well after a back injury ruled him out in 2021. And honestly, he could be the catalyst that injects some experience into the team. After all, he was the one who led them to victory in 2018. Another player who's pretty much guaranteed to get in is the 24-year-old Norwegian Viktor Hovland, who's currently sitting at number 11th in the world rankings. So that's 4 extra players who are nailed down to be in the lineup. Also, even though there's a lot more room to experiment for the rest of the positions, we expect Donald and McIlroy to opt for a couple more Italian options, like Guido Migliozzi. You know, for that extra home advantage. What do you think? Does Team Europe need LIV Golf members to win next year's Ryder Cup? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, and see you in the next one.